Welcome to the Mental Advantage Podcast. Whether you're an athlete trying to perform at your best when it counts the most, a coach or business leader trying to get more out of your team, or someone looking for more personal growth, this is the place for you. This podcast is your map to guide you to the right mindset, systems, and strategies you need to become the best version of yourself. Now, here are your hosts, John Cullen and Brandon Allen.
All right, Brandon, we have Mr. China McCarney on the show tonight. And friend of the show, friend of ours, overall all-star human being. I mean, just one of those guys that every time he comes on the show, it's just not only just energy overflowing, but we're smiling. It's a good time. We know he's going to open up and share with us every, good, bad, the ugly to the journey he's been on. But really, really somebody that we enjoy having as a guest.
For sure. There's certain people that, depending upon, how you think and believe and all that, there are certain people that give off an energy or a vibe and a frequency, right? And China's just one of those dudes that I'm tuned into, right? Like I understand where he's coming from. I understand, the journey that he's about and where he's pouring that energy in to help, athletes and really just anybody, but, to help with the anxiety and depression piece of it. And he's always just so transparent to let us ask questions and get really good, honest answers for our listeners to hear. So, he's done it once again.
Yeah. And guys, just to bring some of you up to speed, if you don't remember maybe the last episode that he's been on a couple of episodes prior to tonight. But we've got, China is the founder of Athletes Against Anxiety and Depression Foundation. He is the vice president of Jaeger Sport. So if you've been to any baseball field in America, you more than likely have seen a Jaeger band hanging from one of the fences where kids or baseball players are doing arm exercises. At least, hopefully, you've seen that. Author of the book, Off the Field, Finding True Purpose and Passion, and Tell Your Story. And then also, and this was one of the topics of a episode we had, is the Mental Health Manual, the companion journal that you can find at mentalhealthmanual.org. China is somebody, he had a playing career, baseball, studied psychology in college and kinesiology, all that good stuff, played professional baseball until the age of 25, and has been very open about his battle with anxiety, panic attacks, and depression that he had for a while now, and kept it secret for 6 years, but got on our radar pretty early on. And the first episode, if you've not heard the first episode we did with him, you should go back and listen to it after tonight's episode, because, you really hear the struggles and some of what a up and down roller coaster it's been, for him since, his first panic attack that he actually explains in details in the first episode. So, really good stuff there.
Absolutely. And like you said, again, just, here's what I really, really love about China and what he's doing is he is showing you what the true application of the things that he preaches. He's showing it to you on a daily basis. And he's showing that it is hard and it is, it can be difficult at times, and but there's highs and there's lows, and he embraces both of them, right? And so many times we have theoretical discussions, and our guests are wonderful. They really are. We talk about it all the time. I think every guest that we've ever had is probably better than we deserve. But China shares the way that he shares, really, really shows the daily grind. And I just respect the hell out of that. And to witness the growth and application, of all of these things that he talks about, has been wonderful to watch. And again, he's one of those guys that I'm happy to say and proud to say I know that guy,
right?
And consider him a friend. So that's he's great, and I think once again the listeners are going to learn a lot.
Yep, well put. And guys, he gives you that window into all of those things Brandon just pointed out on social media at China McCarney. That's ChinaMcCarney on TikTok, on X, I guess it is now, and then also on. You can also find his information about the AAAD Foundation at AAADfoundation.org. But in the meantime, get your pen and paper ready, because here is China McCarney. Well, there he is. China, man, always a pleasure to have you on the show. We really appreciate you taking the time out, because I know, especially this time of year, things are busy, just a little bit busy at Jaeger Sports, right?
A little bit. We actually, our busiest time of the off season, just getting everybody ready. So once the season starts, the busiest part of our day is trying to shoot under par on the golf course, and yelling at each other. But, no, genuinely, always enjoy these talks. Super happy to see both of your beautiful faces, one of your head of hair. And I'm excited to dive in.
No, look, I mean, as I was saying in the intro there, I guess this is like the third time we've had you on the show. And I mean it sincerely when I say, not only are you like just one of our favorite guests, but you're one of our favorite humans. Like, I love everything that you're doing, like everything that you're a part of, all of the things that you've been kind of championing and, kind of this cause you're behind, as far as athletes against anxiety and depression. And I want to start there because, one of the things I think for the listeners, it's been, a little over a year since we've had you on the show, and that's completely on us. That was a total oversight, because there's no chance we should be going a year without having you on. But I want to, so for some of the listeners that don't know, I mean, you have and continue to deal, with anxiety, panic attacks, depression for over a decade. I mean, I say continue to, because I don't think there's a finish line in sight with any of that stuff. But I think a good place to start is, how have you been? Like, how are you doing? How's the journey going?
Yeah, it's a great question. And, I think overall good. And it's funny you say, one of your favorite humans, because when we're on the calendar that I'm going to get to talk to you guys, I know it's going to make my night better. It's going to make the rest of this week better, because we're like-minded. We have no problem laughing at ourselves. We have no problem being vulnerable and just being real, which for me is really my favorite part about life, is just being real, being vulnerable. And that wasn't always the case when this journey first started. As I've said on the other episodes, I hid it from everybody for 6 years. And once I started just being who I am and sharing, hey, today at Target, I almost pooped my pants in line because I couldn't take my groceries home. It's like the right people stay in your life, laugh with you, and the world just gets lighter. And so to answer your question directly, I'm doing good, and I'm actually starting to like the human in the mirror as well, which has been a long time coming, but overall doing good. There's still struggles. There's still negative self-talk, which I have a cool perspective on that I'll share later in the episode, I'm sure, when we dive in. But overall, pretty well. And I think it'd be a mistake to not ask you both how you're doing, because we always talk about me, but just in the grand scheme of life, family, mental health, physical health, Tony Little videos aside, how's everything going?
Well, look, and thanks for asking, because I honestly, after 120 episodes, I think you probably are the first person who's ever asked that question back to us. So I appreciate that. I would say that me personally, I think in my journey, in one of the challenges I think of doing this podcast is because we talk to so many wonderful individuals who do share and show up with that vulnerability, and they share a lot of the systems and strategies and the tactics and that we talk about just to improve the mental health piece of things or improve our mindset. Is I find myself, I don't want to say, instead of self-awareness, it's almost becomes like a analyzing like my own self. Like I start to like pick apart things like, oh, like I'm starting to think this way about this, or I'm starting to think that way. Like maybe that's this, or maybe that's what so-and-so was talking about on the show. So there is that kind of challenge there of not overthinking things. But something I will talk about here in a little while is I've been really focused a lot recently on this idea that things are just happening, that we are the ones who are putting labels to everything, that we're the ones who are allowing those thoughts that we think about whatever the situation is to now create this narrative for ourselves. And we'll dig into that a little bit because I think you'll have some interesting insights into that. So I'll turn it over to Brandon now and we'll get.
Yeah. Well, both of you well said. Yeah. I mean, for me, it's, still staying curious, right? I mean, just, about other people, about myself, just kind of, the thing that I have to kind of lean into when I'm unsure and not quite understanding a situation or whatever. There's a lot of faith there that I may not understand why at the time or whatever, but if I remain curious and remain open, then at some point, there will be a piece of the puzzle that fits that I can go, oh, well, that makes sense now. So, I try not to get too bogged down in the day to day, but it, it, like everything else, it takes work. And so I think, working to find those questions that burn inside of me and to stay curious, to allow for the answers to reveal themselves, because I don't know that it's ever going to be something that I'll figure out on my own. So, yeah. And that's why I love talking with you, right? And with John and all of our guests, is because it always provides some insight as to, oh, well, have you ever looked at it from this perspective or that perspective, or, taking the time to step back and go, okay, well, this makes sense now because, you apply something that you learn from folks like yourself. So I do appreciate you asking that.
It definitely gives you, I think, to Brandon's point, a chance to think differently about things. And I do love that it challenges us, challenges the way we think about things or condition to think about things. And I wanted to ask you a question, because as I followed your journey on TikTok and I've followed it in person through our podcast conversations and just in general, I mean, we'll text every so often. Is there something you've learned? This might be a little bit of a loaded question, but is there something you've learned along this journey that you could point to and say, of all of things that I've done, I wish I had known this, say 5 years ago, 6 years ago?
That's a great question. I would say I wish someone would have told me there's no finish line. Like that a goal is not going to lead to an everlasting fulfillment, because once you get to that goal, you're going to want the next one, and you're going to want the next one. And I'm not having daily panic attacks now. That's cool. Well, now I want to get on a plane and go across the world. So there's another goal.
Yeah.
And so it's like, because that perspective alone can help you relax. And like you guys were both alluding to, of like openness is a big theme right now for me. Of I'm going back through all the books I've read, and I've developed, like, for me, the best way to consume information is read a book through once, underline my favorite points, go back again, write down the favorite points of the favorite points on scratch paper, go through the scratch paper, and then put it in the master copy laminated binder, like one sheet only. And it's been so crazy. Like we talked about fate, where anybody that's listened to my episodes in the past, we have an inside joke of Tony Little. And on Saturday, my girlfriend's sister brought over this foot massager, and it had Tony Little's name on it. And it's like, are you kidding me? Like, we had this on the calendar.
Yeah.
If you don't believe in fate, karma. But it's like everything I'm reading right now from different authors, from different times, it is all just with the deepest theme of openness, seeing reality for what it actually is, and then not only accepting it, but can you love everything that happens? Like, that's that next step of, like,
right.
You know, and you can practice that in so many different ways. Some easy ways for me is on the golf course. You are not dictating what happens all the time. You think
Right.
you are, but a ladybug farts on your ball when you're putting and it misses the hole.
Yeah.
But it's like, okay, like, next shot. But yeah, I think to get back for a bite-sized answer for the listeners, in so many more ways than one, I think I wish I would have known that there wasn't going to be this finish line that gets you to a place of, like, I'm good now. Like,
Yeah.
life is life at all times. Yeah.
So you just said something, China, that I was thinking about asking you tonight, because I know you are somebody who has great perspective on things, and especially when it comes to, like, this attitude of gratitude. Have you allowed yourself, like, if we are to characterize kind of your mental health journey as like a monster, like just some just to give it some tangible, like, identity, right? Have you allowed yourself to be grateful for that yet? And the reason I say that is because when I think of your journey, and I think of all of the people you've impacted through the Mental Health Journal, through, you know, Athletes Against Anxiety and Depression Foundation, and all the great work you're doing with that, or whatever, like, in some weird way, I know it's been an absolute hell for you at times to go through this, but, like, I think of this in purpose and mission. I know that's one of the things that you have written about even in the past, but, I mean, do you look at it that way? Do you say, like, I'm grateful for this? Like, I know this has been a burden to me, but I'm truly grateful for this.
Absolutely. And that was one of the biggest changes in my own mental health, was probably when I turned the corner in my own journey and started trying to use it to help others. And at first, I didn't know what I was doing. It's like, I'm starting this movement based on a social media post, and then it turns into a business. But yeah, and that's another theme of podcasts I've been listening to, of there's pretty much no amazing human story that you hear that doesn't have an incredible dark, incredible trouble. And my dad sent me this post the other day, and it was pretty cool, where this guy said, do you ever think about that trees go in two directions at the same time? And the guy's like, what do you mean? And just for long story short, there's gravitropic or gravitropic growth and phototropic growth, which gravitropic, you're growing towards gravity. Photosynthesis, you're growing towards light. Well, when a seed first gets in the ground, it has to develop a foundation, and it's gravitropic. So it's hard. It is a lot of times where the plant will die, but it has to get its roots down. It's dark. It's tough. No one sees that. They see the nice flower that comes up, or the tree that comes up. And I think that's the way I kind of look at my journey, is I had to go through so much of the hell to get perspective in my own life. And then now to be having conversations with, you know, just today at the golf course before I went out, I talked to one of the first individuals I helped when he was in high school. and now he's at the Hamilton School doing acting, and
Wow.
he has his own foundation called SOS, which is Save Our Students, which is a suicide awareness thing. And it's, yeah, I've tried to do that more, especially in meditation, of as crappy as it's been at times, and like those stories of literally not being able to get out of the Target with the groceries, or having to leave something, panicking on the side of the road. At this point, I pretty much wouldn't change a whole lot that's happened, because here we are, and we wouldn't be talking if it hadn't happened. So
Yeah.
It's interesting because I remember some stuff that we talked about, and I think you even mentioned it, and it seems to kind of be a theme where I think at one point you were talking about, I think it was about some weight loss, and you had gone through and you'd lost like 16 pounds or 18 pounds, but you gained 4, and or the net of it was, you gained 4 or 5 pounds. And it's this idea that you have to change your identity for long-term success. And I think about that, and then you talk about this tree and this seed, and it is a true change of identity, right? I mean, it goes from that root system to then this growth to then where I think you probably are now, and where you're providing shade and comfort to others around you, right? So like there's this evolution and this cycle of life that I have watched and heard, and I feel a part of, and it goes back to, and I've mentioned this before. It's one of the favorite things that I've read from some of like the old, Greek philosophers and stuff. And it's essentially, wise is the man that plants a tree that he'll never sit under. Right. And I think what you're doing, and what you may not understand at this time, and it ties into what we were talking about, where you don't always have the answer, but without your struggles, the shade and the comfort that you will provide in so many other people's lives, you may never fully get to see that or take part in that. But I can tell you, as a friend and as someone on the outside watching, you're doing a hell of a job. And that identity shift from where you were to where you are and to where you're continuing to grow is pretty amazing. So, certainly a tip of the cap there. It goes a long way from the writing 400 and almost 500 pages and not having a positive thing to say, to seeing that growth today. It's amazing. And I'm proud of you. And I think everyone that you're helping would say, thank God that China experienced that to get me to where I am today. So it's very cool. Very cool.
yeah. No, come on, throat. Don't you close up on me, because John almost got me last time.
Hey, listen, it's super polleny around here too. So blame it on the allergies, buddy.
Yeah, I got flowers in here that I did not put in here, by the way. But no, we talked about, I think right before we hopped on, about why it's difficult for people to hear nice things about themselves. I think the overwhelming majority of people, when people are saying nice things about them, and that's been my skin gets squirrely, and I have been practicing. And like when you started, I had to write notes originally, because the shade and comfort to others around you after growth. And then why is the man that plants the seed of a tree he'll never sit under. But then I just like put the pen down and accept this and appreciate it, because that's what it's all about. Right. And like, I'm going through ego is the enemy right now. And John, you brought up something earlier that I know we're going to dive into big time, about surrender. And then who am I really? And I was studying Buddhist stuff, and it's like, life is suffering because desire is suffering, and we all desire. And then you can get into a mental knot of like, well, am I supposed to help people? Am I supposed to be nothing? My identity is not me, then are you? But I think at least where I'm at presently with ego is you don't look at like anything that I'm doing is not so that others can be like, wow, look what China did. It's, can that help me? And then can that tree grow? Can we add more branches so that mental health is not taboo? Mental health is not stigmatized. Men talking about feelings, vulnerability. And then the other side of that is I think at certain times we're afraid to just tell people the truth that it's hard freaking work. Like it is hard work. It is hard work daily. It is, I think we talked last time about there's 3 guarantees in life, which is there's going to be pain, there's going to be adversity, and there's going to be a constant need for hard work or something like that. And, but yeah, I have been trying to allow myself to take that in more recently of it's all pretty cool. And, to be a part of the movement is just, it's a cool time to live because I think it's the first time people are talking about mental health as much, and especially for men, for sure.
You brought up China, the Buddhist way of thinking there. You know, I was sharing with you before we got on the air that I've been reading this book, and this person I'm hoping to get on the show, Joseph Wynn, who wrote this book, Don't Believe Everything You Think. And one of the things, and I guarantee the 3rd show I've mentioned that book. So hopefully he comes on because I feel like he owes us something. But there was a quote in there that I thought was really interesting, and I want to unpack this a little bit. He says, people have a hard time letting go of their suffering out of fear of the unknown. They prefer suffering that is familiar. And then he goes on to talk about, the author goes on to talk about, Buddhists say that anytime we experience a negative event in our lives, 2 arrows fly our way. Being physically struck by an arrow is painful. Being struck by a second emotional arrow is even more painful. That's the suffering piece. But he says in life, we can't always control the first arrow. However, the second arrow is our reaction to the first. The second arrow is optional. So the suffering is optional. It's it is the thing that we talk a lot about this in mental performance, right? Is this idea that, it's our reaction, that space in between that trigger, that thing, that event that's happening to us, that space is there for us to be able to choose our reaction to that thing that has happened to us or whatever. But I really do. I think that's just I thought it was a fascinating thing because we're going to talk about this a little bit later on. And I started to unpack it earlier about just us labeling things. But I really want the listeners to understand that as like this, what we choose to do from an emotional standpoint, that suffering piece, it can be controlled. And I think it's one of those things that it's important for somebody out there who's listening and can hear your story and hear some of the things that have been going on, to hear that. Brandon?
Well, think about too. I mean, we all played, we're all athletes and have competed. I mean, what you're describing, John, is momentum, right? And it's the momentum in one direction or another. And, we've all been a part of that team that has been up by 5 runs going into the 9th, and somebody kicks it, and then the pitcher walks a guy, and the next thing you know, you let those negative thoughts kind of creep in instead of just kind of ripping the Band-Aid off. Hey man, let's move on and whatever. And I think a lot of times mental health can be that way, right? To the point that it just doesn't start off big, right? It's never something big typically that starts it. It's just this little thing. And then all of a sudden you kind of start thinking, well, hell, that didn't go my way. And now you have this almost confirmation biasing that starts to happen, and you start seeing everything that's not going your way. And then it's just, and it's really rough to overcome. And I think that's a really good depiction of kind of what the author's talking about there, right?
And look, you, Brandon, in China, I promise we're going to let the guest talk here eventually.
We're going to invite you back for your
so you
your
can sit
answers.
in on our discussion. So, but you just made me think about this going all the way back now. I think it's episode 11. We're on 111 now. Is Mark Glissini, and he talked about the importance of momentum. And one of the things he talked about, China, was the difference between a candle. Isn't it amazing that a candle, so it's the one accomplishment, it's the one thing you've done in your journey. For example, the first time you managed to accomplish a small goal that you had set for yourself or whatever, the wind, just a little bit of a breeze, somebody moving the wrong way can blow out that candle. And that's fire on that candle. But then when you start to build, to Brandon's point, that momentum, and now all of a sudden you start getting even more winds collecting those things. And now all of a sudden you've got a bigger fire going. Isn't it interesting that same fire that a little bit of a curtain moving would have blown out is now consuming everything in its way? Any obstacle that comes its way is absolutely, the wind that blew it out when it was a candle is actually enforcing the fire now, is actually fueling the fire, because it's just growing and growing and growing, and it's just consuming every obstacle in its way. And I do think it is, to Brandon's point, it's a powerful thing. And I feel that with you. I feel like you've got such great momentum now that, are you having bad days? Absolutely. You have bad days. We all have bad days, but it's those bad days that would have blown your candle out in the past are now just fueling, because now you can consume those. And it's like, okay, this is what we're doing. I know how to kind of bounce back a little bit faster than I have in the past.
Yeah. And that goes to the no finish line, because my standard forever was perfection. And so if I'd have a bad day, or if I consume too much alcohol or something, and then it would take me weeks, because I'd be like, yep, you failed. You're a piece of trash. You suck. And then it would take me way too long to get back to just, that day's over, this next one. But you guys both touched on an interesting thing about almost being addicted to the negative emotions, or getting comfort, because the momentum works, like you said, both ways, and our brain doesn't know any different. And I just learned this, where just this weekend, I took my 3 years of notes from therapy, and I just looked through what are the common themes for the last 3 years, which was pretty wild to look back at stuff I had written 3 years ago. And I wrote at the top of this page, I wrote, I have become chemically addicted to solving problems and to chaos. My brain doesn't know any better. When life is good, I almost create a problem to be comfortable again.
Yeah.
So, and then I wrote a note in pink, of course, because come on. The brain can be rewired with practice. And that's my main focus. My number one focus right now is being real with myself about what my default is, because my brain is always going to try to take me back to default. And when you have a parent incarcerated twice before you're 12, you have a divorce, you have small town syndrome, you have just chaos. And now I'm in a place, all my needs are met, finance is good, a beautiful woman loves me, I don't have to do my hair ever again because I'm bald. Like, there's so many good things going on that it's super uncomfortable how comfortable it is. And I know some people will hear that and be like, oh, yeah, it must be nice or tough. And it's like, Tony Robbins has a thing where he talks about you're a 68 degreer, right? So we all know what a thermostat is.
Yeah.
And let's say, John, you're a 68 degreer. And over the next month, 2 months, 3 months, you start eating bad. You're not doing your meditation. You're not where you need to be. That thermostat's getting turned down. And all of a sudden, in 3 months, it's at 58 degrees. And you're like, wait a minute, man, this is cold. Like, we need to get back to 68 degrees. Everybody can relate with that, because people pretty much, that's how we're motivated, is we get worse and we know how much better we were and we want to get back. But what he says most people don't realize is it's the exact same when you get to 78 degrees. Your brain's like, hey man, you're doing a little too well. You've been eating well, your relationship's going well, business is going well, and your body, brain, neurological system, the chemicals in the brain are like, we got to do something to get back to 68 degrees. And if you're not aware of it and you're not daily practicing it and trying to listen, it's a lot harder to make those changes because your body is incredible at bringing it back to what it thinks it needs to survive, because that's what you've made it comfortable with over your entire life and your entire way of thinking. And that's the biggest realization for me right now, is I'm getting better at the good cycles, but I'm still being dragged back to the bad cycles sometimes. Over drinking, or what's this all about? Or you're actually a piece of crap, none of this matters, blah, blah, blah. And so I'm trying to be really, really strict with myself right now on making sure at least twice a day for 3 minutes even. Silence, listen to my mind, what's kind of defaulting it, and then challenging it. And it's not easy, but I think it's pretty cool because that stuff's all very prevalent right now in my life. And you both hit on that with the, those questions. So pretty wild.
It's funny. I was watching something on TV last night. Jelly Roll was on there, the country music singer, and he said this great quote. I've heard before, but it's right in line with what you're saying. He said, "You'll change when the pain of staying the same is greater than the pain it takes to change." Like when you finally accept this idea that I'm not happy with where I am. And some of the greatest change in life has come from that necessity to, it's like I always tell people that I work with is you have to make inaction costly. You've got to make not doing anything costly to the person that you're talking to, because then they'll be motivated to make a change and do something. Because sometimes people think that just not doing anything is one of the options, and it's not. That's not an option. It's just you either are going to go backwards or you're going to go forward, but rarely can you say, I'm just going to stay static and just kind of be in this moment right now. So, that's a cool thing about the 68 degree. Having roomed with Brandon for many years, he's like a 38 degree, or like that thing. He's like a meat locker. The AC was always on in the middle of the winter.
Yep. Yeah.
So, hey, here's something I want to start to unpack a little bit is, because I kind of teased this early on about where my mind has been going a lot recently, is this idea of like us putting thoughts to labels on things, and just the importance of paying attention to the way how we're thinking. You had a TikTok post a while back that said, "Stop filling in the gaps with the facts you don't have," which I love this. It reminded me of a book by the Heath brothers called Make It Stick, which talks about like, if you give people a bunch of information, they will begin to tell themselves a story based on their level of experience. Your level of experience will tell, you can have the same bits of information that Brandon and I both have. We'll all three tell ourselves a different story because of our own experiences. And back to the book that I was talking about, there's another great excerpt that I wanted to unpack. There's a guy, Sydney Banks, says that we live in a world of thought, not reality. Thought is not reality, yet it is through thought that our realities are created. And he talks about this idea, China, that if you walked up to 100 different people and you asked them, like, what does money mean to you? That you would get 100 different answers, because even though money's technically the same thing, it means different things to different people. It could mean time and freedom. It could mean, some people, if you grew up like I did, where money was always a topic of conversation in the family, big family, and it wasn't easy to come by. Both parents worked and all that stuff. Then it's something that personally I've always been a little bit afraid to talk about. So it conjures up different emotions in me. It's the same money though. It's the same money that everybody, it's the same physical thing, but the different answers because everybody has different experiences. And then this is what he says. I love this. He says, the meaning or thinking of we give any one thing is what determines how we ultimately feel about it. That meaning or thinking is the filter through which we see life from then on. Because of this, we live through a perception of reality, not reality itself. Like this thought is the things like that is the reality is that the event happened with no meaning. There is no meaning to the event. It's just an event that happened, but our thinking becomes our interpretation of it.
Yeah. Based on where you're at in your journey or what your default thought process is, that's either going to be absolutely invigorating, exciting, and like, I determine, I do, or it's like, well, yeah, well, I think I'm a piece of crap. So of course, no, like, and I've seen this a lot. And one of the best examples I heard about this that hit me hard because of panic attacks is if you do, we're all athletes. If you do a physical workout where at the end of that workout, you're at max heart rate, you're sweating, you've got that dry mouth, you can almost taste metal in your throat, but you know why that happened. You just worked out. You kicked ass. That's why you're feeling that. You're not afraid of that. If that happens to you in a car when you're in traffic, you're going to go to the hospital and think you're dying. Right. Yeah. And so for me, that was a cool thing because it's like, yeah, that's the story you tell yourself. And there'll probably be a lot of Tony Robbins things because I did one of his events 2 months ago, but he said life is not Tony Little, Tony Robbins.
Right. I went to the Tony Little event. That was me.
Yeah. Yeah. But he says, do you look at life as happening to you or happening for you?
Yeah.
And our brains, like, have you ever seen anybody that's been on social media? There'll be those posts where it'll be like 4 or 5 sentences, and it'll be like, what if I told you you read the second line wrong? And that one. Yeah. And then you go back and you're like, wait, what? Because our brains are prediction machines. You're not actually seeing reality as it is. You're seeing reality based on your experiences. Your brain is saving energy by predicting what it thinks you don't really need to focus on. So I think it says this. I've read this before. Go, 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 go. And I wrote that the other day because I have a hard time, or I had a hard time in the past, especially wanting everyone to be fired up about what I'm fired up about. Like, how could you not want to talk about Buddhism or like the brain or this and that? And then I realized I don't give a flying F about some of the stuff other people care about. So why would I expect them to care? And so I wrote down, everyone is living their reality, not reality. They're living their reality. And if you can try to take a step back, and that's made me way more compassionate in certain climates right now in this country of like, based on the information you receive, you kind of get a prediction machine to spout off the same headlines that you saw or whatever. And it's just, that's their reality. And if it's not valuable to you, what are you going to do about it? Accept it, change it, leave it. Like, that's it.
Yeah.
But that is, the story we tell ourselves about things that happen pretty much determines 100% of our life, which is terrifying, is awesome. And it also tells you we need to be very intentional and aware of what information we're consuming, especially if it's in passing and you're scrolling and it's like, this guy is this, or this girl is this. So yeah, I love that stuff because the more aware you get of it, the more you realize how much you don't actually see what is happening in front of you. You see what you've either seen before, experienced before.
But it allows you to give people more grace too. You know, like I think I went through a thing a few years ago where I was really starting to get bad with road rage, and we had enough. We've been doing the podcast for a while, and I was talking, we'd been talking about this idea of grace. And I thought, you know what, I'm just going to reframe this. So rather than the person who cuts me off or is driving like an idiot or whatever the case may be, is rather than me instantly going to anger, I'm going to, in my mind, think that maybe I'll tell myself a story. Maybe they're on their way to a kid's ball game that they haven't been able to even be, they've had to miss the last four, and they definitely want to make it to this one, and they're running behind and they're trying to get there as fast as possible. Maybe there's somebody, that is struggling, has somebody in the hospital, whatever the case would be. And I'll tell you, one of the things I actually started to do for a while was just like say almost like a little prayer for them. Like I was trying to like just give them enough grace and just be like, look out for them versus me making it a competition, like my being the competitors we are. I mean, the interstate is my racetrack, right? Like I'm always trying to get up there, and the cops are pace cars and all that other stuff or whatever. And when they get off the exit, man, it's back to racing, and we got to go back and gain some, but it's, I started to think about, and I want to say, I can't remember the guest that told us this, but they use, and you've probably heard this before. They said, if everybody had all of their problems in a bag and you all went to the middle and you put all your problems in these bags onto a pile, and everybody went back to their places and said, okay, you can go back in and choose any bag you want. More times than not, you would probably choose the bag that you laid on that pile if you could compare it to some of the other things that other people were going through or whatever. And I think it's good just because, like you're talking about there, it's just kind of having, when you start to reframe things, and I think there's great power in that. I mean, I love the idea of like anytime we can reframe from a vocabulary standpoint, like even like things like the get to versus have to and all that stuff, I mean, is very powerful. Brandon?
One, I think as you're talking to yourself and giving people different ideas, maybe one of them could be a cute middle-aged bat boy for the new Nashville team that they've got to hurry and go see, one of their favorites out there. But I think you said something there, China, about the consumption. We have become creatures of consumption, right? The social media consumption, whether it's food, entertainment, and we've become, I think, kind of soft. And so to your point earlier about how difficult some of this is, I think it's easier for people just to ignore it and consume something else, right? Whether it's, TikTok or whatever. But, how do you change, or how do you give direction to some of those people that you're working with to say, hey, be very, very cautious here in what you're allowing and inviting in, right? I mean, it's kind of like, John called it a monster earlier, but like, some of the old horror movies, right? A vampire couldn't come in your house. You had to invite them in. And I feel like we're kind of doing that with some of this stuff that we do consume. We're letting the creature in between our ears. And, is there a way to do it outside of, or control it outside of just erasing it off of our phones and getting rid of it? Is there a way to do that?
There's definitely a way to do it. I think the way I start basically any of my work with anybody is, where do you want to be? What are you willing to do to get there? And what do we have to do? Right? It's just, I think the simplicity, like the concepts are so simple, but the execution is so difficult because not a lot of people are doing it, and then we are being manipulated all day long. Consumption. And for people I work with, it's just, there's going to be, like, which pain are you willing to have? Are you willing to have the pain of regret, or the pain of you didn't reach your potential, the pain of like victim mentality, or the pain of discipline, waking up early? You have to choose your pain. You have to choose your suck. And like another one of my favorite books, The Subtle Art of Not Giving a Fuck.
Mm-hmm.
Use my one F word, hopefully, on this thing. But the book is so hilariously titled because it is so the opposite about not giving a F. It is about choosing what to give an F about.
Right.
And everything else, it's just, and the reason I deleted social media off my phone over the weekend is I was watching a soccer game that was terrible. And so I was on TikTok, and my screen time Sunday morning when I got my weekly report was terrifying.
Wow.
And so it was like, okay, 7-day break. But what always reminds me to not have that approach, to be honest with you, is look at social media as a vessel to give instead of to consume. Because the fate of tonight and the way you guys, we talked about like my journey, and I've been posting more lately, especially on Twitter, and then I'll share those everywhere. And it's like, I needed that tweak of perspective that I use social media primarily to try to share and grow that tree we were talking about. And Saturday is a great reminder of to be on guard of what you're consuming and I'm very algorithm aware, and my algorithm is awesome. But, and here's the but for everybody out there, do this practice. You're getting permission right now to be on TikTok for 20 minutes straight. Okay. You will see, like for me, and for everybody, it's going to be different, but for me, it's golf, funny animals, motivation, like podcast clips about this stuff.
Yeah.
That's it. Okay. They'll start slow because they're freaking geniuses because they know you're more attentive at first, and then your brain gets more mushy the more you go. All of a sudden, 8 to 12 videos in, it's Biden.
Right.
Trump.
Right.
This guy's in an affair scandal. P. Diddy. And it's like, I don't consume that anywhere.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so that's the little puppet strings and the awareness of consumption. Cause I wrote that down. We're creatures of consumption. And to answer your question directly is you have to determine what you want your life to be. And you have to have a why, as John said, that is more valuable than staying the same and being comfortable right now.
Yeah.
And that's the struggle. But that's what I would recommend people clearly defining what I did this the other night. My girlfriend and I are going over it tonight. I should call her my wife to be or something because girlfriend sounds so high school, and we're way more than that.
Or that you passed girlfriend a few exits ago.
Yeah. And if she loves me bald, man, we're making it.
Well, that's a cat keeper right there.
Yeah. But I wrote down the other night, what do I like about my life? And I do everything color coded because for me, it's easier to consume. So I have so what do I like about my life? What do I not like about my life? And I started writing, and then in a big square under what do I like, I wrote most things to remind myself, like, don't get screwed by the list you're about to write.
Yeah.
And then I did the same thing for my relationship. What do I like about our relationship right now? What do I not like? And again, this side was more intentionally, but now there's a map of where the action goes now.
Sure.
Yeah.
Because, okay, let's tweak these things. But if you don't clearly do that for yourself on a consistent basis, then you will be susceptible to just the daily life, the commitments that you have, and then the information that you consume. If you're not on guard, it's going to manipulate you. And before you know it, you'll be arguing right, left, red, blue, bald, ponytail, Tony, Little or Robbins, all that stuff.
There's an exercise, China, that I know I've talked about on the show, but it's been a long time ago. So anybody's new listener will have not heard this, but that I used to work with athletes and teams, and I would share this exercise with them, is the idea of editing your life. So if you think about what role an editor plays in the film, in a film movie or something like that, this movie is to tell a story. And when the editor gets a hold of all of the raw footage and stuff, their main role is to go into that room and to revise this film and take out any of the things that aren't adding and value to the story, but that aren't continuing to help build the story or whatever. And us being the narrators of our own and the authors of our own story, it's really important from time to time to kind of take yourself through this revision process with your own life and say, what is it that's going on in my life that's adding to my story that I want that is adding value? And maybe there's even times where I might need to throw another layer of something on that I think would help to bolster the story even more. But it's really important to start cutting out some of those things that are nice, but they're not adding value to the story. They're not, and maybe that's a relationship that you've got going on with a friend or somebody that's not bringing value to your life, is start to cut some of that stuff out. And you made me think about that with like social media and those things. I think just in general, that echo chamber that exists. And I'm so hyper aware of this as well, to the point where if somebody sends me a video, I usually am like reading the title before I even click play, because I'm thinking, if this is something political, I have no interest whatsoever in. I'm not even going to play that bad boy, because now I'm going to be looking at these political videos for the next however long or whatever, because of the way the algorithm. Have you seen Social Dilemma? Did you see that on Netflix? Ever since I watched that, I was like, oh my gosh, like this is so crazy that this is how they, like you said, they're sneaky, but really interesting stuff there.
Yeah. One last story on this about action step, because Brandon asked the question, what would you tell someone to do? And there's typically 3 responses that you can have to everything, which accept it, leave it, change it. Right. So the other day, I am in like most hopefully healthy people, political spectrum right now is just a recipe for disaster. And I don't judge people by what they believe. Their reality is theirs, like we talked about. But I had someone in my life. We were talking as a group. There were 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 of us. And they had seen, I think, a headline, because they typically do this. But did you see what P. Diddy did?
Right.
And I'm like, I saw headlines about what he might have done. I don't know. Right. I don't really care.
Right.
And she said, this is typical in 2024. Look at you men and what you're still doing.
Yeah.
And I said, oh, hold on. And I walked out and I shut the door, and they all cracked up, because it was like, no,
you're not engaging.
Not fighting.
Me. Yeah.
No. And that's sometimes what you have to do. If you can, there's situations where if it's a power role or something, or a boss, you might have to listen to stuff, but you can tune it out. But a lot of that is just choosing what you consume and what you're going to listen to. Because it was like, ooh, you know what? I'm going to go do some pointless math on my computer and not listen to this. Yay! So, yeah.
What a great way that's perfect.
There's the other thing while we're on cell phones, and then we'll move on. I saw, I read where a person said, the next time you think of holding up your cell phone and looking at it, like when you're in a conversation, even in a group of people, if one of us holds their cell phone right now, if we were standing around, is just imagine yourself holding a newspaper up and reading it, like literally like holding a newspaper up, blocking yourself from everybody else in the group, because that's essentially what you're doing, because these cell phones are like a book now, or like a newspaper or whatever. So what would you think if somebody, you're in a conversation with them, and even just glancing at their phone is the same? So every time you pick up your phone, just imagine yourself holding a newspaper up as a barrier between you. And I tell you what, it's given me pause every time now. If I'm like sitting there watching TV or something with my wife, if she can hear me, she would probably be shaking her head. Actually, I know, probably shaking her head. But I do at least think about it more when I'm picking up my phone, because it is just like picking up a newspaper.
Yeah. I was going to whisper and say, I'm going to use that with my wife to be. Yes,
exactly. So China, what has been going on? I mean, we in the last little bit of time here, strike out the stigma and this free therapy. I want to give you some time to talk about both of those things because as we go into the beginning of the year, how has that been going? Are you the program? I assume continuing with like strike out the stigma.
When you say beginning of the year, you're talking about the season, right?
That's true.
We are mid-April.
Okay. That's true.
Right.
Well,
I just didn't
is
know
there another beginning into the year? That's right. Opening day is.
The Masters is this weekend, so I'm just letting you know.
Hi, Brandon. I appreciate you so much for butting in because I'm like, damn, are they not releasing this for 9 months? It's like.
So China, how's 2028 looking for you?
All right. So maybe my baseball bias is taking over there.
Yeah. Well, I'm 45 years old when this came out, and yeah, but no, things are great. The competitor in me always wants, little changes, but it is more reactive now because we have Strike Out the Stigma that funds a lot of the year. We got another grant that my sister joined the foundation last year, and she's been incredible. She got, like, my joke is she got everything artistic and creative, and I got all the athletic ability.
Yeah.
And so she's just awesome and crushes all that stuff. And so it's nice to have someone, because Jaeger Sports is, it's a real career and it takes a lot of time. And
we know the feeling, trust me.
Yeah. And so, and then there's times, and this would be good for the listeners, because I don't ever want to paint the picture about, like, because titles and the story we tell ourselves listening to a podcast, like we're talking about, is like, oh, works for Jaeger Sports and has this foundation and yada. There are times I cannot meet the demands of AAAD because I am struggling myself. And like, there are times in silence. No, that can't be right because I'm speaking. There's times in conversations privately where, just in a moment of weakness to my sister or my dad or someone, I'll just be like, I wish people would remember why AAAD exists, because I struggle so much.
Right.
And there's still times where, life happens, and it'll always happen to all of us. And, but on the positive note, the Braves partnership continues to evolve. Tyler's back this year, and he is shoving right now.
I was going to say, it's not a bad one to have in.
Go Bravos.
Yeah.
Go Bravos.
So he's good. I texted him on the day that the White Sox game was rained out, and I said, I think God wanted to give the White Sox a break from your nastiness right now, bro. Like that. He wanted to keep that team away, and he loved it. But and then my big, like, competition, we canceled last year's golf tournament because we didn't get enough funds. And the first one, I kind of funded it myself through AAAD and some personal friends, but I'd really like to get a title sponsor like Dick's Sporting Goods or something, to where it just happens every year, because it's such a good camaraderie event.
What does that look like from a funding perspective for you? What does it take to become a title sponsor?
$10,000 would get it done, because that would cover basically the first one cost, just for transparency. The first one cost about $12,000. And so if we got a title, then little sponsors underneath are a lot more likely to tie their name to something that's sponsored by a Nike or Dick's. And we've been super close. The problem was post-COVID, budgets got,
sure.
Fiscal years started all over the place, but and then I really want to do more of this stuff publicly. Like the most fun I have and the most fulfilled I feel is getting to work these concepts out with real people and talking it out and figuring out how to apply it to life, and like asking the questions, how can I apply this to my life tomorrow? Right? Like, a book is 200 pages. It's great. But that's why I have the new system of, like, give me one page so that I can take it. And that helps notice trends across a lot of different philosophies, Buddhism, Stoicism, Ryan Holiday, Mark Manson. And so just continuing to, it's like any craft, right? Like we're all athletes. You have a craft, you're good at it, you want to get better at it. And so just continuing to figure out how to articulate stuff to where people can change their life and simplify that. And so that's kind of what's been going on. Triple AD's growing slowly but surely. And life-wise, it's just figuring out ways to be with more like-minded people that want to, you guys said it perfect earlier, be curious. Curiosity is growth.
Absolutely. Well, man, I tell you what, again, I mean, the hour, selfishly, it's never enough time. I know our listeners are always like, an hour's plenty. We're good with that.
Yeah.
Actually, if you
trust us,
down to
China,
like
it
30.
has nothing to do with you. The comment section is always raving about you, and yeah.
They would like us to stop at the intro and just kind of wrap it up. But no, it's just, I'm just so impressed by you. I know I say it every time you've been on, but just the vulnerability, the awareness. I think that is what I've seen from a growth standpoint in you more than anything, is your awareness has just kind of continued to grow from the first visit to now. And the understanding, and I challenged you, I know, in one of the first episodes, well, I think it was the first episode, is to give yourself that grace. And I see it in your videos. I see it all the time. And just the way that you're recognizing, like, hey, I don't have my A game today. I don't have my B game today, but I'm going to bring 100% of whatever I have today. But it's just being able to bounce back, and it's recognizing all the things. So you are a walking testament to the mental health journal, all the things you've been doing or whatever, like Brandon said earlier. And we're just proud to be associated with you, friends with you, watching you on the journey, and just, we continue to pray for you and hope that everything just continues, that you're allowed to continue to grow at your pace, how you are wanting to grow, but also that you continue to have a platform like you do to get your message out there. Cause I think it's a powerful one. So we really appreciate you.
Yeah. We're definitely in the stands with the big fat heads cheering for you. That's for sure.
Yeah.
Well, I think it's conversations like these, like I said, it gives me the most fulfillment, and it has nothing to do with like me sharing what's going on. There's just been simple things we've talked about that legitimately changes the course of our lives, hopefully the listeners' lives, definitely Tony Little's lives, because the Google searches that probably happen and the AdSense that he gets. But
algorithm changes.
Algo.
But that first episode, I remember the Grace comment. And then I remember talking about how a lot of times people look to you to have a smile on your face, when sometimes you don't want to have a smile on your face. If you're the leader and you're the energy source, that's awesome most of the time and a huge burden some of the other times. And Brandon, you said something so powerful tonight about oftentimes it's not a massive thing that changes your life or creates the momentum. A lot of times it's a small thing. And I feel like when you have conversations like this, there's notes being taken. There's stuff we don't even remember that we didn't write down that will hit us tonight. And those are the little things that change your lives. And I think like meeting you guys, having these conversations has changed my life for the better. It's definitely given me permission to give myself more grace. Hearing your intro on my second episode was humbling, but also awesome, because I wanted to accept it and not just like, oh no, I don't want to feel that. Like,
Right.
But I think for anybody listening, I just read this entire book and I broke it down into 3 phases, which is perception, action, will. And perception is the mind, right? Like, figure out what your reality is, figure out what you want your reality to be. Then action part is take action with the body. Every day whether that's sitting still and breathing and paying attention to your body, but trying to take right action based on the objective reality. Like, don't play the victim. Don't do denial. What is the actual situation? Because until you accept that, your action won't be right action. And then once you take the right action, I think the most important part is the will part, which he defined it as the heart and soul. And that's your ability that when you take an action you believe is right based on your perception of reality and it blows up in your face, do you have the will and the perseverance to just accept it as a learning opportunity and start that whole process again? And I think that's just a cool, easy way to look at life. Is you're not always going to, you're going to take the right action. You're going to get hit in the gut. It's going to blow up in your face. You're going to lose a loved one, but can you accept it, move on quicker, and just realize there's no finish line? And all of these conversations help me with my perception to digest it, to where tomorrow I'll take better action because I got to talk to you two tonight. And I think that's what being a human is all about. And so I appreciate the hell out of you guys. Like I said, I put this hat on this morning and I knew it was going to be a good mental day. I played like shit on the golf course and I blame the hat, but
never wearing the hat again.
Yeah. See ya.
Going in the garbage.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I appreciate you guys more than you know, for sure.
That's a great last word, man. We are again just so thankful for you, and I will give you this. We will not wait another year to have you back on. So you've earned it. You've earned it to come back.
Beautiful.
All right, brother.
Thank you, Master.
Good to talk to you. Exactly. It's the wish you've been granted.
Yeah.
So,
congratulations.
Yes. But man, we can't thank you enough, and definitely happy for you, and looking forward to watching Tyler throw for the Bravos this year and continue to raise that money. And again, guys, as we talked about at the beginning of the show, AAADfoundation.org. There is a place that you can go on there and donate. There's the free mental health journal. There is free therapy on there. I mean, there's so many resources on there, but you got to check it out because, it's the whole thing. And China was kind of talking a little bit about this, is that knowledge without action equals nothing. Knowledge plus action equals everything, but you have to act. So I appreciate it. Thanks, China.
Thanks, China.
Thank you.
See you, buddy.
Want to provide feedback or stay up to date with the show? Visit our Instagram page at Mental Advantage Podcast, or you can send us an email at podcast@mentaladvantage.net. To have John Cullen work with you or your team, please write to him at john.cullen@mentaladvantage.net. Thanks for listening to today's episode.